Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of Podiatry Marketing. With me, as usual, is Big Jim Mack. How you doing today, Jim?
Doing well, doing well. Enjoying the warmer temperatures here in Oregon. It's springtime and just loving life in green, sunny Oregon.
Wish I had an echo button. That would have sounded so much better with the, Big Jim Mack. Anyway.
True, true.
All good over here too. Once again, opposite to you, heading into our cooler weather. But in Cairns, we only have 2 seasons, hot and hotter. So at the moment, we're heading, no, it's still in autumn. So, but heading towards winter. So it's getting really nice. This is when people want to travel up to Cairns because it's just, if you're from down south, you want to be here this time of year.
Yeah, I got to come over and visit at some point in time. I don't know when that's going to be, but I would definitely try to hit the warmer or the hot, not the hotter part of the year for sure.
No, you come over this way, Jim. You can stay with us. You are welcome. How many kids you got again? 2, isn't it?
2, yeah, 2.
Yeah, we can take 2. We could have 2 kids. We'll fit them in somewhere.
Sounds good.
Okay, so what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about mentoring either students or residents. Maybe it's a younger physician in your community, but I really kind of got onto this topic of mentoring because over the last few years, I've been a mentor at Scholl College of Podiatric Medicine in Chicago, and I've gotten, not only been able to help out some students, but it's been kind of a rewarding experience. And I think there's definitely some things that can be gained by folks, looking out for the next generation of podiatrists. So I think there's a bit of a tie into marketing here, but I think it's also a plug that if you're not mentoring a student or you haven't been involved with your podiatry school, now's a good time to seek out those opportunities.
Yeah, I used to love doing that. We used to take 1 or 2 students every year from the university that's in our state and have them come up to Cairns. And the best part about it, even if, like, you hope that if you're looking for someone to employ, you're hoping that student one day might work with you. But if not, you're still just passing on your knowledge, especially if you think you've got a good clinic or you've learned a few things that you can really share with them and hopefully give them a really positive spin on the profession.
Yeah,
Because there's people out there who don't always think in a positive way and you don't know who they're going to be talking to next.
it's funny you bring that up because that's one of the topics I talked to the student, the first kind of my newest student that I'm mentoring. He's heard kind of like good things and bad things about different types of practices and stuff. And I'm like, well, it's going to really vary, but who you talk to. So trying to give them some guidance and kind of connect them to the network of people in the profession will kind of give them a real world grounding when it comes to trying to figure out the career path they want to go down. But yeah, definitely, it's been a very rewarding experience not only for myself, but hopefully I'm providing them some value as well.
Yeah, well, I reckon if you haven't done it, consider it. I know some people go, I'm not sure whether I could mentor them. But if you've been in the podiatry profession long enough, you think you're a pretty good podiatrist. You are going to have something there, and you're positive. If you're a negative twat, don't do it. just stay in your little box. Don't talk to anyone. But I think if you're a positive person, you've been around for a little while, and you know that you know more than the students, they are always going to benefit spending time with you.
No, absolutely. And I think there's a need, at least in the United States, the schools, like I had 2 students last year, and then I have my 3rd one this year. So definitely there's a need at the different podiatry schools around, at least in the US. So definitely don't be shy to go and inquire with your alumni kind of relations people there at your school.
And we didn't always just take students from the university that I went to either.
Sure.
If we got a call from someone who was like further down south, a different university, we took anybody because we always just felt it was just part of building that network. And I love when we've had students in the past and you bump into them, a decade later at a podiatry conference and you see what they're doing. And some of them have gone on and done great things. And some of them, they were duds as students and they're still duds. Nothing's changed.
Yeah. Sometimes it does happen, huh? But
yeah, well, they say you can't polish your poo, but you can put sprinkles on it to try and make it look better.
There you go. But
So where are you starting with all this?
Yeah, we started, but before jumping into that, I will say that a lot of the stories I hear from students, though, is they spent time shadowing a bunch of different specialists. They had a great time with a podiatrist, and that's so whether it's a podiatry student or maybe it's someone that's looking into the profession, just being open to those opportunities can really help grow the profession. And like I said, it can build up your network. But jumping into the some more specific reasons why I think it can be beneficial for your practice and potentially for your marketing is that obviously with the you're going to show them kind of procedures and what you're doing, but it also helps you kind of build your authority by kind of teaching them and you having to kind of figure out how you explain what you're doing and why you're doing to somebody else. They're going to have questions. They're going to have, they don't have the experience you do, but it does help you kind of position yourself when you do that as a mentor. Like I said, you're not just necessarily benefiting them. You're obviously they're getting a benefit, but when you're having to kind of explain why you do what you do, whether it be the way you practice, why is your schedule a certain way, why do you use digital marketing? I'm sure there's different kind of questions that you can help answer for them that will help kind of crystallize your thinking. Because sometimes, if you're in solo practice, you're kind of in your own head all the time. You don't necessarily, you kind of explain it to yourself, but it's something different to kind of create
Mm.
those thoughts and have to say them out loud to somebody else.
Well, it does. It also makes you, when you're saying something to a student and they do then question you on it, you go, oh, yeah, why am I doing it that way? And it does, it makes you sort of reflect on how you actually do certain procedures. And we've even had students when they've come in and they've said, oh, how come you don't put gloves on as soon as the patient walks in the room? Well, why would I? I don't even know what I'm doing yet. And that, because at university, that was just, so it also shows them you can be a little bit lax in certain areas. You don't just have to rub a glove. You put a rubber glove on as soon as a person walks through the door.
No,
But and I think the other part too is when a student does ask you something and you're not quite sure about the answer, it makes you go, okay. And it makes you start, when they're not around, reading up on a couple of little things that you're thinking, oh, maybe I've got a little bit slack in that particular area. The next day you come in looking strong.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is a good reminder that to kind of always be learning, and sometimes they'll kind of throw you for a loop, and it's a good chance for you to kind of to pick those things out. I'll also say that when either you have a student in your office or you're mentoring somebody in the clinic, you're going to be seen as the expert, right? When students choose to learn from you, and patients see that you have someone that's in your practice and you're kind of mentoring them. If you're a bad podiatrist or you're someone that doesn't really get it, you're not going to have students or mentees, right? But it's only experts are the people that have mentees and people that follow around with them and kind of hang out. So maybe your fellow referring providers, patients will kind of be impressed the fact that you actually have people following you around and learning from you, and it shows that you are kind of a trusted source and a kind of a
Mm.
trusted expert in that local community. Obviously, this whoever you get these mentees from, trust you. So it's like a signal of trust for patients. Not, it's not, sometimes I think people are a little afraid that, oh, I don't want to mess up the patient physician relationship by bringing in someone that's untrained or that doesn't know what they're doing. But, like I said, it's a huge kind of notch on your belt to say like, hey, like I'm good enough to have mentees following me around. I can be impressive to different patients and sometimes other referring providers.
Yeah, well, I remember my GP I used to go to, and he would often throughout the year have students in with him from the university. And I always thought it made him look better than the average GP because the university is not going to let the students just go anywhere. That they will do a slight vetting process to make sure that person's okay. And yeah, and I do know there were. I just think when we had students, I'm assuming the patients looked at us the same way I would look at my GP. If the university is trusting you with students, then your clinic must be at a certain higher level than everybody else.
No, absolutely. I think getting that kind of rubber stamp or that trust of the big university name, obviously they probably know if it's a big local university, they're going to know the name of that university and probably more. It has kind of more brand trust probably than even your clinic. Maybe you've been around a long time and you do have a great clinic, but just having that additional trust from the university sending you students to mentor is a huge bonus.
Yeah, and I know we used to even use it in our social media, part of our marketing. When we had students on board, if we had photos of us with them doing certain things, we would put it on our Facebook page. Instagram, you say, hey, got a couple of students with us this week. And yet the comments, you get comments back. Patients and other people say, oh, it's really good that you're helping the next generation.
No, absolutely. It's like you said, you can use it in your marketing. You say like, we don't just treat patients, we teach the next generation of podiatrists or the next
Oh,
generation
good
of
quote.
healthcare professionals or something to like kind of show that you're not just thinking about yourself, you're thinking about the future of the community by doing that. But I definitely agree with you on those points. It is a way to, actually a way to market yourself as well, right? Because maybe, these students or these mentees that are coming into your practice, or maybe you're doing remotely, they'll have a more of an affiliation potentially with the profession of podiatry. So when something happens to their foot or their ankle, their son, shadowed a podiatrist. They know, it's almost like a way to have kind of an informal referral network of people that trust you, along with kind of, not just the patients, but also the network of those students, the other students, the parents of those students, the friends of those students, that you can kind of gain trust with those folks as well.
Yeah, and I reckon probably 50% of the students we took each year ended up working for us at some stage. They eventually just, because when they were looking for work, especially if I thought they were good, and you'd always say to them, hey, if you're ever looking for work, any of you want to come up this way, please just reach out.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and when they did, you sort of went, I've been with them for a week already. I know what they're like. And if they know what we're like and they know how hard we work, then you've already ticked a few boxes.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
So what's next?
So next is kind of like a kind of a brief topic you touched on in the previous one, is that, there can be some reverse mentorship opportunities as well. There's, by them being at school or in their residency, sometimes they might see some emergent technology or some trends that for some reason you haven't come across yet. So, students are kind of immersed in the latest and greatest, right? They're always, whether it be, different types of technology or surgical techniques, potentially like digital workflows, thinking like gait analysis or scanning. People don't usually use, hard plaster casts so much anymore. They're using different,
Yeah.
iPhone apps with the LiDAR scanners on them, or maybe there's some new social media channel that is really big that's growing you just weren't aware of. So there are opportunities to kind of like learn from them as well. So it can be kind of a two-way street as far as that information sharing.
Yeah, I think the biggest learning factor I got from students and doing mentoring was really them asking us questions. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And when you have a fresh set of eyes questioning why you're doing something a particular way, it really does make you look at it. And there's sometimes when you explain, this is why we do it this way, and they go, oh, that's so much better than the university, because they understand. And because sometimes the university are doing things leaps and bounds ahead of what we're doing. And other times they're back in the dark ages with a few things. So it gives you an idea of what the students are coming out with as well.
Yeah, definitely. I would say their questions kind of reveal maybe the current patient expectations or preferences sometimes as well. Like you said, if they've been to other clinics, there's a potential that they can, well, when I was in this clinic, there was a digital onboarding that was really great for the patients that I noticed, or, that they kind of had a remote scribe that did all their notes. They didn't have to, the doctors weren't kind of going out of the room and having to, spend 10 minutes dictating or writing up a note after the fact. So, there's different learnings that can be helpful when you bring these students, or the podiatry students or other students, into the practice to kind of get their take on things, and kind of, they are that kind of next generation. Obviously, they're potential colleagues in the future, but they can see things in a way that gets you out of your norm, as far as maybe change your perspective a little bit.
Yeah. And I think what's good too is sometimes it is uncomfortable when you take on your first student and you're going to be mentoring them, whether it's a couple of days or a week or 2 weeks, it's uncomfortable. So if you thought about doing, you go, oh, I'm a bit frightened about doing it. I've never done it before. Perfectly normal. And there will be eyes on you and they will be watching everything you do and they will question what you're doing, but it doesn't mean what you're doing is wrong. It just means you're doing it different, but it gives you an opportunity, like we spoke about, to reflect on why you do it a certain way. And have you not kept up? And now it's a good time to keep up. And that comes back to the whole glove thing. Some students, anytime they're even just touching a patient, gloves on, just had to put them on. Whereas when I went through, like, you put them on when you need to put them on. and it sort of, it changed over a period of time. It was a gradual change, but you saw as the students coming through each year, how more and more with that, the whole gloving at a certain time was becoming more important compared to 35 years prior to that when I went through.
No, absolutely. It kind of gives you kind of a front seat as far as the trends and where things are moving, right? So, you can kind of see, how their behaviors, what they've been taught versus maybe what they're missing. What some of the, when I look back at my own, training, I would say it was heavily surgical. I
Mm,
think a lot of podiatrists, before me were more into like making orthotics in the US and doing more, office-based procedures. But by the time I kind of was in residency, we had some time in offices, but for the majority of the time it was inpatient diabetic care and amputations and after hours cases and doing trauma and those kind of things. So, it's going to really inform you as far as like where things are heading, but also gives you some information about like I said, what the students are being taught now and kind of what direction is the profession heading in some ways for good or for better, for good or for worse. And, are there ways that you can help supplement their education and give them some advice about things that what is private practice like versus a group. You can kind of get into these conversations with them because like there are going to be kind of gaps in their knowledge, right? They're still students, they're learning a lot, and I think when you're a student, sometimes you're kind of going from, exam to exam or hoop to hoop, and you're kind of jumping through things. So, being a mentor gives you an opportunity to kind of maybe help them kind of see the higher level, kind of 10,000-foot view in a way, as far as, what do they like to do? Obviously they have to be attentive to their current goals, but at the same time, when their training is over, like what is their idea of what their profession can be? And they're going to be learning along that process, but kind of having, that mentor-mentee relationship can help give them that perspective and maybe help bridge the gap somewhat between the kind of didactic academic learning they're doing and helping them kind of like feel comfortable getting into a residency program or, a situation that is going to kind of play up to their strengths or the kind of professional life or career life that they want to have.
yeah, I've also noticed too when you have a student come in, also gives you a bit of a insight into the mindset of the lecturers at the time too that are at the university. Because I'd have students come through that were like super positive towards private practice and having your own business, because the lecturers that were there were people that had been in the profession for a number of years, had their own businesses, done quite well, were at a certain age where they were going back and working at the university, compared to some other lecturers that went through who worked in community health or had a really crappy boss, didn't like private practice, didn't work for the government, and then slowly weaseled their way into the university, and then throwing all this negative stuff at students, go, private practice is evil,
Right.
KPIs, any boss that has KPIs are just evil bosses. And when you hear that from one student, you go, okay, well, who's your lecturer? They tell you. Then you hear from another student the next year, you go, oh, is it this lecturer? Yeah. And you start realizing, okay, this is something that you've got to be aware of, that students are coming out with this mindset, which isn't always the best.
No, absolutely. I think that's why I really encourage the students I work with to get multiple perspectives from different podiatrists and different practices who've had different things. Like you said, sometimes, if someone's they only have one voice that's, a negative voice about private practice, they may not have other resources or other people in the network to go ask, on the happier side or the positive side of
Mm,
of private practice, right? Yeah, there are business responsibilities, but there's also a lot of freedom you have when you control your schedule and things like that. So I think it is important to like help them network and help them see different perspectives of similar situations.
yeah. So, okay, what's next?
I'd say that just kind of wrapping up that topic too is that you do have a young person in your office, so you can kind of use them as your own personal survey as far as asking them poll them, ask them some questions about how do you find a dentist, like kind of getting ideas as far as what forms of social media or marketing works with their generation. Because I said like you know if you're trying to get seniors or people over the age of 60 in your practice, maybe it's not as useful. But if you're living in an area where there's young people and you're trying to attract young, healthy, active people into your practice that need to get better from training for marathon or whatever kind of active lifestyle they have. Maybe there's some major pickleball injuries you want to help out with. Asking them like, where do they get their information from? If you were
Yeah,
to, tear your ACL, like how would you find a doctor and kind of get a general sense of what is their path to specialists and that understanding their thoughts, obviously they're younger, and kind of, what is influencing them as far as making some of their care decisions can be another way to, get some value from these mentees in your practice.
So drag some information out of them.
Exactly. Um, but on the next part, I would say that also, like you mentioned, I think you mentioned this briefly as well, is that, you get some really great students, whether it be university students or thinking about podiatry, or podiatry students, or, maybe you've met some younger podiatrists at some conferences who have questions for you, that you can be a resource for them. It's a great opportunity for you to market and find potential associates and team members, kind of in a long game format where you can build a relationship slowly. I think sometimes, if you can do that slow, you can get to know somebody over the course of months or years. It can have a bigger impact than having you know, that kind of courtship you have, like person's graduating from residency. You've had one or two in-person interviews with them. They haven't been able to spend much time in your clinic. And it's kind of hard to make a clear decision whether this is the right person for your practice, because, when we're first getting to know someone, in that kind of situation, a lot of people can be, could put on a face or could put on a mask and be very professional for, 48 hours or 72 hours, and then not really be that person that they were trying to, show that potential hiring podiatrist. So if you have these kind of long-term relationships with the students, you can identify, who asks good question, who seems like they have a good work ethic, who wasn't running out the door at, 4:30 to go do something. I mean, obviously sometimes students, they have a little bit of free time, they want to use it, but, what are that kind of potential student or mentee that might be a good opportunity, might be a good hire for you in your clinic in the future?
Yeah, who the alcoholics are. They're rocking up hungover in the morning and things like that. But it's true what you said too about it's a window into like the future of podiatry, because I know when I went through, we were pretty much thrown in a clinic with patients on week 6 of our first year. Just bang. We had a clinic on campus, and we were straight into it. As the years went on, and then in your second year, third year, you were seeing more, you're on clinic longer hours. As the years went on and the course changed and adapted, then all of a sudden it changed that they weren't really seeing patients till the third year. And then you were getting feedback from the profession saying, oh, wow, the students coming out aren't as switched on in particular areas, really smart in other areas academically, but communication was down. Yeah, how to work and deal with patients was down. Their experience of the number of patients that they were seeing was down. And it's because you're in touch with, and when you've got students coming through, you can actually notice these things. Where when I went through, we happened to have some lecturers that were just right into biomechanics. So biomechanics was like a priority for them. And because I loved it, I just assumed everybody came out loving biomechanics. And then you have some students coming out and they just hate it. But then you find out they didn't really learn a lot about it. They did a couple of subjects, but I don't know, each university seems to have a focus on different things.
I think it's also like we talked about building relationships with the students, but you can also they get a general sense of you and your practice, right? Whether it's your culture, your values, what the vision for your practice is. So if they kind of buy into it themselves, this could be someone down the line for you. And like students talk, right? So if you're super mean, like you're super like, not really, you're doing the mentoring more just to kind of like for your own ego, you're not really looking out for the best interests. That will get back to the students, right? Some people just want to like, I think most people come from a good place wanting to volunteer to mentor students, but if you're, it definitely is going to spread to the students and potentially to the school. So you want to make sure that you have kind of a growth mindset when you're kind of bringing these students in, because it is an opportunity to hire potentially some great folks for your practice in the future.
Yeah, it is a great marketing opportunity for your business though, because if you do get a student come in and you do a great job, and like you said, the students talk, if you were a fantastic experience, they'll go back and they'll tell everybody else, hey, you should have gone to Cairns and worked at ProArch Podiatry. Yeah, just some experience at ProArch or XYZ Podiatry.
Exactly. XYZ is where it's at.
Not ABC, it's XYZ.
Absolutely.
So what else?
Yeah, just to wrap it up, I would say that, obviously, like we talked about, you can kind of tell them about your culture, but it's also about kind of, they can help you obviously kind of improve the patient journey. because like we talked about previously, students are going to ask why a lot. Why do you have people come in 10 minutes before the appointment? Why do you do digital onboarding? And it gives you a chance to kind of tell them about that, but maybe they're going to point out some other friction points they noticed. Maybe they were in a room with a patient and the patient complained about X, Y, Z to them because they were there, right? They were just physically there. So, it's an opportunity as well to kind of like improve your processes. And like I said, they have a different perspective, right? They don't have kind of your built-in biases that you have. They're not the clinic owner, they're not the practice owner. So they see your clinic and your patient maybe from a little different perspective. So, it might lead, potentially to better online reviews or better kind of optimization of some of your practices, as far as, within the clinic. And then obviously, which could lead to maybe some better word of mouth for the practice. So I think it's really, really important that that people take the time to consider mentoring, whether it be college students that just want to learn about podiatry, or podiatry students at your local school or maybe from another school, because it definitely shows them what the real world is going to be like. But I think you get as much from that experience as they do. And I know that from my perspective, even though I'm not in practice anymore, I've had the opportunity to mentor some entrepreneurial podiatry students, and their questions and, kind of getting to know them over time is not only benefited, hopefully them, but also me and the work that I do with podiatrists.
Yeah, I think of all the years we took students in, and we had sometimes just high school students that came in, I always felt I got more from it than what the students did. Which is probably, maybe that's why we kept doing it. I don't know why. And I know that they got benefits from it and some of them came and work with us, but I always just felt I learned so much having them come in, and it helped everybody in the business sort of lift their game a little bit. So whenever anyone knew there was a student come in, the whole team used to get excited about it.
Sure.
Because it was fun. That's a good topic.
Yeah, it was a fun one. Like I said, I've had the pleasure of mentoring 3 Scholl College podiatry students, and look forward to many more. So yeah, I thought we'd give a little plug for those out there who haven't either pursued the opportunity or been contacted by your school. Definitely something to look into. I know that everyone's got a busy life and a busy practice, but at the same time, a day, a month to have a student come in and view what you're doing and how you're helping out your local community can be an inspiring way for them to get involved with the profession. And there's, like I said, there's some side benefits for your practice as well.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap up.
Sounds good, Tyson.
Okay. Oh, we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Bye now.
Okay. Bye.